A little child was naturally distraught when his mother died suddenly and tragically. However, he said something that put an end to the funeral proceedings when he visited her with his aunt to say his final goodbyes. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. Since David was Haley's only kid, she was the ideal mother to him. She attempted to fulfill all of his desires and showered him with attention. She would be content if she could give the young kid the finest life has to offer. He deserved nothing less. Together, they would play in the park, take walks in the woods, and visit the movie theater and arcade to spend the entire evening having fun. David used to spend every Wednesday night with his grandparents. Haley was forced to raise her son alone when his father left the picture. Though she occasionally needed a small break and to be able to spend some time with her friends and herself, she didn't mind at all. Haley went to the gym most of the time with her sister Rose. Haley and Rose were separated by 4 years, with Haley being the oldest of the two. She made Aunt Rose David's godmother since she knew how much her kid adored her. If a child's parents are somehow removed from the scene, godmothers are in charge of providing for their upbringing and education. Rose had accepted the role, believing it to be purely ceremonial and presuming she would never have to take the reins. She had no idea how mistaken she was. Unfortunately, Haley was involved in a catastrophic vehicle accident returning after a trip to the gym. Haley was irreparably hurt, but it was too late when the driver left the scene. The entire experience was distressing for the entire family, particularly Rose, who was present when she died away. The bereaved family was unable to cope, and Rose eventually had to take on the role of godmother for her nephew, making good on her vow to care for him. She had initially thought that they would move in with his grandparents, who, although pleased to have him visit them once a week, were too elderly to take care of the impoverished little child full-time. He would so move in with Rose and thus become her son. She wasn't sure she wanted to be a parent at all and had never thought of being a mother at her age, but here she was, forced to act as her poor nephew's sort of surrogate mother. Rose got the call a few days after Haley passed away suddenly. She couldn't quite place the familiar voice of the man. It dawned on me at once. It was David's father, Vincent. He was phoning to request custody of David after learning of the death of his former partner. Rose informed David that she would be his godmother and would be watching over and taking care of him going forward since she could not allow it to happen. Vincent objected vehemently, and the two ended up exchanging heated phone calls for many hours. Rose was told to guard her back by Vincent as the whole ordeal came to a conclusion. A few hours thereafter, her door was knocked on. When she replied, her jaw dropped to reveal that it was Vincent in the flesh. He appeared somewhat more mature and gray-haired than she recalled, but it was definitely him. He stormed into her home, wanting to see David. But for the next 3 days, the youngster stayed with his grandparents as Rose prepared for David's burial and prepared a place for him in her home. Given that Vincent had not supported David for the most of his life, she questioned why he had suddenly developed such strong feelings for him. Rose abruptly ejected him from the house and threatened to call the police if he didn't leave, to which he had no response. With a promise that he wouldn't give up on seeing his son, Vincent turned and left. Rose went back to her planning. She went through Haley's belongings, seeking for anything that might help her figure out how to raise David. Notebooks, handwritten notes, or even a journal. She eventually located something, a notepad, which she opened and started reading while crying. Rose was really missing her sister. She talked of her happy times with David in the book, along with her disappointment at Vincent's lack of involvement in his son's life. He never sent a card on his birthday, not even once. Rose was intrigued by this and began to wonder why Vincent had changed his mind. She called the police and gave them the full thing, just to be safe. After investigating Vincent, an officer learned some really concerning information. It came out that Haley was killed by the identical type of automobile that he was driving. Maybe this was just a coincidence, but it didn't feel that way at all. Rose made sure that the police would step in if Vincent attempted to attend the burial and disrupt the events, even though there was insufficient evidence to haul him in and make an arrest. They concurred. Rose notified her entire family and advised them to contact the police if they saw Vincent in any way. When the funeral morning finally arrived, Rose was feeling quite ill. She longed for this day to not occur and desperately wanted it to be finished. She was also incredibly hurt and grieved for David. Saying farewell to your own mother must be incredibly difficult and traumatic, especially at such a young age. The funeral was really a very lovely event that went down without a hitch. The church was elegantly furnished, and the priest's lecture, which focused on Haley's many wonderful attributes, was fitting and heartfelt. At one point during the funeral, everyone was able to line up to pay their respects by walking by the casket. Though heartbreaking to witness, individuals ought to have the opportunity to say farewell. They arranged themselves into a neat line and moved gently past the casket. Rose and David were at the back of the line, waiting their turn with patience. However, Rose saw two police officers enter the church as they got closer to the casket. They'd been told by the undertaker that Vincent had been spotted and the police had arrived to take him away. Too wrapped up in their grief to notice anything else, they proceeded to the casket. David glanced at his mother before turning to face Rose to find out if she was asleep. Yes, Rose said she was asleep. However, that's when he began to murmur something. Rose was unable to understand what David was saying, but she could tell by the expression on his face that he was in great agony. Her eyes widened as she finally heard the words, and she knelt down to attempt to make out what the poor youngster was saying. David seems to have observed that his mother was not donning the jewelry she usually wore. It had the letter D for David on it, and was tiny and gold in color. The funeral was called off right away. It was impossible for her to be buried without her necklace on. Her family would not have disregarded her desires. It was surprising that David even noticed such a little feature. Fortunately, Haley was able to find and attach the necklace around her neck in just 10 to 15 minutes. Rose saw something startling when tightening the clasp. A series of letters and numbers was carved on the reverse of the necklace. It was the password to Haley's bank account, the one that would allow anybody to access her entire savings. After quietly copying the password, she bid her sister farewell for the last time. At last, the funeral could go on, and Haley was finally buried. David's grandparents told Rose that Vincent had been taken away by the police later that evening when they were back at their home. He had previously acknowledged that he knew David would lead him to his mother's money, which was why he intended to disrupt the burial and abduct David. Luckily, he was in jail thanks to the cops. At last, Haley had been buried, David had a new guardian, and Vincent would never trouble the family again, so everyone could finally sleep peacefully. It is now your turn to handle. What were your thoughts on this gripping and amazing tale? If you had spotted Vincent attempting to interrupt the burial, how would you have responded? If it came down to it, could you raise your sibling's child? Please feel free to share your ideas and comments in the comment box below. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.